But the first speaker tonight is Reverend Mel Williams, who will speak to us on the challenge in faith. And Reverend Mel Williams retired in March of last year after 24 years as pastor of Watt Street Baptist Church. He served in pastoral ministry for more than 40 years, and he is the co-founder here in Durham of the Religious Coalition for a Nonviolent Durham, which was founded in 1992, which advocates for the end to gun violence here in Durham. He is also one of 5 founding pastors of the Walltown Neighborhood Ministries, WNM, Inc. Formed in 1999, WNM seeks to revitalize the Walltown community through education, healthcare, housing, economic, and spiritual development. Mel's advocacy efforts have led to the opening of the Walltown Health Clinic in 2005. He's also the founder of End Poverty Durham, of which he is now the coordinator. And it's an interfaith coalition seeking to end poverty in Durham within 25 years. End Poverty Durham launched the Durham Economic Resource Center in 2008 and also sponsors a child poverty initiative to mobilize congregations to reduce the 27% Durham child poverty rate. Following his retirement from Watt Street Baptist Church, he now serves as the coordinator for End Poverty Durham, working under the umbrella of MBC, a longtime anti-poverty agency located in downtown Durham. Mel holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Wake Forest University and a Master's of Divinity degree from Yale University. So Mel, please help me welcome Mel.
Thank you, Tom, for that kind introduction, and thank you especially, Tom and folks at Pilgrim, for organizing this series, because I think it's the kind of thing we want to see happen in many, many other congregations across Durham. So I really commend you for organizing this, and thank you for inviting us. I want to structure my time with you around 3 questions. What is the need? Poverty in Durham. What is the faith response, the response of the faith community? And what can we do about it? From my 24, now 25 years in Durham, working with the Religious Coalition, I know many of you are familiar with Marcia Owen and that work, and with Walltown, it seemed to me, clear to me, that the common denominator of many of our social issues in Durham is poverty. And so I said to Haywood Holderness back in 2004, what's the faith community going to do about poverty? He said, call a meeting. And we've been meeting ever since, once a month in Poverty Durham. A coalition of faith leaders seeking to worry about, struggle with, and see what needs to be done to reduce the dreadful poverty rate in Durham. You know that Durham is a place of much prosperity. We hear about it all the time, but because of Duke University and Duke Medical Center and Research Triangle Park and the downtown Renaissance and Durham being the foodiest city in the country, we hear all these wonderful things about our city, and we're very proud of those. So while Durham is thriving, is flourishing, in the shadow is abysmal poverty. We have a 27% child poverty rate, which I've said is shameful, it's dreadful, it's terrible, and in our business we would say it's even sinful that we allow this to happen. 14,000 children in Durham living in poverty. An 18% adult poverty rate, and all of this happening in the shadow of all of this prosperity. There is a sense in which we have 2 Durhams. We have a 21st century Durham and a 19th century Durham. And there is too much disparity between the rich and the poor. And anytime there's that great of disparity, we're going to have a lot of social problems. I hope you will be interested in this book, The Spirit Level, because it describes, David Dodson at MDC said, Mel, this is maybe one of the most important books we'll ever read, The Spirit Level by Wilkinson and Pickett. Why greater equality makes societies stronger. Well, they have documented that where you have a drastic disparity between rich and poor, you will have more violence, there will be more mental illness, there will be more teen pregnancy, there will be more obesity. That it's been documented with too much disparity, that's what happens. Societies where they have less disparity, they have fewer of these social difficulties. So we've got to work on closing that gap. Poverty, what is it? Poverty is not a character flaw. And it's time to stop blaming people for being poor. Because poverty is, somebody said to me yesterday, an absence of income and assets. Poverty is a lack of resources and opportunity. So everybody needs adequate housing, food, clothing, jobs, health care. All God's children. So with this glaring need in Durham, then what is the faith community response? The faith community can do a lot about poverty. And I bring several assumptions as a person of faith. One is, it's a faith statement, we have everything we need to eliminate poverty in Durham. We just got to find the will to do it. And what we're saying is we'd like within our lifetime to eliminate poverty in Durham. You can say, well, that's a pipe dream. And it may be a pipe dream, but we've got to start with that goal. We have everything we need to eliminate poverty in Durham. Secondly, children, and it's the largest group of those who are poor. Children are not poor by their own making. It's not their fault. Thirdly, poverty includes a lack of trusting relationships. I often say that the reason I'm able to stand here in front of you is there are probably 20 or 30 people behind me who made it possible for me to be here. I'm not a self-made person. And that's true for most all of us, that we have that support system. But people who are poor often do not have that kind of support system, those kinds of trusting relationships. And the fourth assumption I bring is that the faith community is an underutilized resource for reducing child poverty. An underutilized resource. Now, all faith traditions, if any of you came to our Faith Summit on Child Poverty, you heard Reverend Barber give some of the biblical examples of our mandate to care for the poor. So, as a Baptist, we always start with the Bible, so I brought my old tattered Bible, coming apart. I've had it since years at Wake Forest. Start with the character of God. It's all through the Hebrew Bible. The Lord is merciful, gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. That's Exodus 34, but you'll find it in many other places in the Old Testament. The character of God. Merciful, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. You can flip over to Psalm 99. It says, God is a lover of justice. Justice is a part of God's character. You go to Deuteronomy 15. Very important passage. If there is among you a poor person in any of the towns of your land which the Lord your God gives you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against this person who is poor. Deuteronomy 15 also says, for the poor will never cease out of the land. Where did Jesus get it? The poor you always have with you? Deuteronomy 15. Therefore, I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, your sister, to the needy, to the poor in the land. Deuteronomy 15. Go over to Isaiah 58. You know this passage. Is not this the fast that I choose, the worship that I choose? Loose the bonds of wickedness, undo the thongs of the yoke, let the oppressed go free. Share your bread with the hungry, bring the homeless poor into your house. And if you do this, then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up speedily. Caring for the poor is a part of our healing. It's Isaiah 58. Micah 6:8, probably the best mission statement for any congregation. Do you remember what it is? Surely you do. What does the Lord require of us? Love mercy, walk humbly with God. Powerful statement. Again, to do justice, part of God's character. So Micah 6:8. Okay, just a quick review. Luke chapter 4. Jesus' first sermon in Luke 4. The very first sentence out of his mouth, what did he say? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. His very first sentence. Talk about priority. There it is. And he also said in the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor. Go to Acts 4:32, the early church. They held all things in common, and there was not a needy person among them. The early church abolished poverty because they shared their goods freely. Matthew 25. Remember that one? When did you see me hungry, in prison? When you've done it to the least of these, Jesus says, you've done it to me. If you don't love the poor, he's saying you don't love me. If you love the poor, you love me. All of these passages, and there are many more. You remember Jim Wallace from Sojourner said when he cut out all the passages about the poor, then the Bible was left just in tatters. God has a preferential option for the poor. The Latin American theologians have taught us that. And so God's priority is the poor. So it's pretty clear that for us as people of faith, then, what our priority must be. Care for the poor. Okay, the third question. What can we do as people of faith? And to me, the most important word in that sentence is not the word do. It's the word we. What can we do? Because to me that means that we need to nurture this community of people who are genuinely concerned, people of conscience. We need to nurture the activists in Durham who are ready to tackle this challenge. So we need to nurture one another in the beloved community of Durham. We had 500 people come to the Faith Summit on child poverty, and I'm very, very aware that it was double what we had expected. But to nurture that wonderful collection of people who become possible volunteers, people who will put their faith into action. One of my members at Watt Street said several years ago, she said, I've been waiting all of my life for the church to address economic justice. Economic justice, and that's really what we are talking about. And so in forming a mission, any mission at Watt Street, some of you have heard me say this, we always ask three questions. Is this mission good news? Is reducing poverty in Durham good news? Okay.
Yes.
Does it seem impossible to accomplish? 3, is there a good chance we will fail? If you can answer yes to all three questions, that's a sign the Spirit is leading you to undertake the mission. So I hope that in all of our congregations that we ask those three questions and that we say yes to the Spirit and to our faith and conscience. and form then whatever task force, anti-poverty mission group in the congregation. In Poverty Durham is it's a wonderful group of people. We'll show up tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at Westminster Presbyterian Church. If you could come, we welcome you. That group we formed in 2004, and it's become a place of networking, collaborating, people who are part of congregations or agencies to say, how can we support one another? Again, what can we do together? But at the same time looking for strategies that may not yet have been initiated. So when we first started meeting in 2004, we said, okay folks, where do we start? Because poverty, I said, we got to talk about 5 fingers. Poverty involves education, housing, health care, jobs, family support, childcare, transportation. So all of these, it has to be multiple strategies. But the group that gathered then said, okay, our priority is jobs. We've got to help people find jobs. We know that people working on education, housing, healthcare, you're going to hear about these in the subsequent sessions. So we started with jobs, and we found a model in David Dodson from MDC pointed us to Greensboro, to Odell Cleveland's Welfare Reform Liaison Project. And that's a distribution center that's also a job training center. And so we took 2 or 3 groups to Greensboro, came back and said, okay folks, do we want to do this? And we all said yes. Now, we didn't have a budget, we didn't have any money, but we said, okay, we were all led to do this. And so we started Durham Economic Resource Center, 118 Hunt Street. It is a distribution center where I call it a low-income Costco or Sam's Club, where our congregations and agencies buy a membership, $100 a year, that entitles our constituents to go there to shop and to buy products at drastically reduced prices. Say diapers, when they're available, that would cost you $20-some at Kroger's, might cost you $4 or $5 at Dirk. But coming there to shop becomes a carrot, a magnet for job training. And so since 2008, we have trained 200 people, and some of those coming out of the shelters and off the streets with various challenges. But of the 200 that have been trained, 70% have found jobs or further education. So it's a model that's working. I was at a board meeting there this afternoon at 4 o'clock. The other action that emerged out of that group was child poverty. So Ann Stock from Immaculate Conception Catholic Church kept saying, child poverty, we've got to work there. The earlier the better. The brain is formed by age 3, and so we've got to go back and start very early. Otherwise, we're going to be still having these social difficulties later on. And so that's become the mission then of this child poverty initiative, is to say, can we work together? That's why we had the Faith Summit, to call us together to say 27%, 14,000 children in poverty is too many. Surely we can do something about that. And so that Faith Summit was precisely to talk that over and to come up with various strategies that are being done. And we know every congregation is involved in one way or another. And so certainly there are so many ways, and this congregation has been a leader for many years in various efforts to serve the poor. And we need to say to all congregations, find every way you can to assist. Clothing closet, food, going to the shelter to prepare meals. But often congregations stick to charity because it really doesn't disturb our life. But we also need to talk about justice and the larger issues of justice. So we're going to work closely with Durham Can and talk about living wage. We're going to talk about, what about a free transportation system in Durham? You already have it in Chapel Hill, I hear. What about subsidized childcare to help low-income people work? I happened to look one time at First Presbyterian's mission budget. I'm always curious about the mission budget because that's a theological statement. If any of your congregation, look at your mission budget. The largest item in the First Presbyterian mission budget is $40,000 for subsidized daycare for children of low-income parents so those parents can work. And that's the kind of thing that needs to happen. And that's something that we in the faith community can certainly support. There are often, Max Rose, my colleague from MDC, is back there, has heard me say over and over that part of my work with End Poverty Durham is sustained visibility to poverty. We need to simply inform people because it's hidden in plain sight. And that we need over and over ways to get the word out. Somebody came to me at the Faith Summit and said, we need to do a documentary on child poverty. Well, I hope we can figure out a way to do that. And we'll keep talking about that. Secondly, after sustained visibility of poverty, relationships with the poor. Too often, people of privilege do not have relationships with the poor. And so the circles of support that comes from Genesis Home, we're looking at another model, the National Circles Campaign, and we're pursuing grant funding now that would enable 3 or 4 allies from a congregation or an organization to partner for an 18-month commitment with a family in poverty to work with them. We've seen this model work in Davidson County. We've taken a group up there. We'll take other groups to see their model. But building those intentional, long-term relationships of support, and not in some condescending, patronizing way, but in mutually enriching relationship. Then the third area is community organizing. We had a training session in this very room a couple of months ago. Gerald Taylor from Durham Can led in helping clergy learn about community organizing around these larger issues. So I'm going to stop right about there, but I want to stop with one question. The relationships certainly are key, because the investment of social capital into those who are poor is the same thing I was talking about. I grew up myself on the edge of poverty, just 1 month away from going to live with Aunt Thelma, because we didn't have any savings. But those relationships, those supportive relationships were there. We have to provide those relationships for children in poverty in Durham, and the faith community can certainly do that. So my question, and a little prophetic challenge to leave with you, and which I mentioned at the Faith Summit. What if God is leading us to the poor, and the poor to us, for the sake of our salvation, our spiritual health? Again, not in some patronizing, condescending way, but what if God is leading us to the poor and vice versa for our salvation? Jeremiah 22, to defend the cause of the poor. Is this not the way to know God? I invite your questions.